Welcome to the Marathon Investigation Podcast, where we discuss and debate the latest news regarding course cutters, bandits, and bib mules.
Welcome to the Marathon Investigation Podcast. I'm Derek Murphy, owner of Marathon Investigation, along with Scott Coomer.
Hey, everybody.
All right. Tonight we have a legend in race announcing, a legend in races in general, Rudy Novotny. Rudy's best known for his announcing work with Disney, relating to the Disney World Marathon and other races, but he does a lot more than just that. So we're going to talk to him about his experience, how he got into race announcing, and of course we'll talk about cheating, what he witnesses being at the finish line of so many races. I'm sure he has lots of good stories to share with us, and we'll see where it takes us. So this is going to be kind of a free-flowing interview. We'll see where Rudy lets us go. Rudy, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, good evening. Thanks very much. It's a pleasure to be on. I'm a huge fan of Marathon Investigation, and the podcast so far have been very entertaining, gentlemen. Very entertaining.
Thank you.
Which one was your favorite, Rudy? I hate to ask.
Well, your attempt to have a conversation with Anita was very intriguing, and 60 minutes later, I think my head's still spinning after listening to that one. I got to give it another listen. That was epic. That was epic. So I apologize in advance for this one might be a snooze fest, particularly comparatively, but I look forward to having a chat with both of you. And I love what has come up on Marathon Investigation, and I think it's been good for the sport.
Thank you.
And I think one takeaway from that, though, is that, you listen to that interview and you think it's going to be just a waste. But I think that the one thing you can learn from it is that if you're patient and if you listen to the other side and you try to find common ground, if you keep working at it, it's possible.
And I don't disagree with you. And that being a fact, Scott, I think you're one of the most patient people I've heard in a long time.
Tell my wife that.
All right, Rudy. But we'll start with the basics. But has it been your dream as a child to be a race announcer, or how did that come to be?
Absolutely not. No, I was going to be an astronaut like all the other kids in my era. No, race announcing actually came up as an offshoot of doing a lot of running and a lot of races, and happened by accident.
Very good. So when did you get started? How long ago?
I'm coming up somewhere around 25 years. Actually came up through a race that I was attending where I was there, but the race announcer never made it. And the race director knew me from running a lot of her events, and just made me an offer of a few free races if I'd grab the mic instead of my racing flats, and just spend the morning kind of doing my best with entertaining and bringing people back at the finish line. And we had a lot of fun. It was a good experience. I just kind of winged it and enjoyed it. And then about 2 weeks later, I went to the mailbox, and there was an envelope from her with, I think it was a check for $100, and I got all excited because that was the birth of my new profession. Oh.
Very, very cool. Very cool. So, I know typically with the race announcer, a lot of times I don't notice or barely notice. I hear that it's usually a local radio personality or TV personality up on a stand kind of doing announcements and that, and I hear it coming in, but it doesn't make a huge impact on me. But you've made a large impact, especially with, through your work with Disney, the Disney Marathon weekend. You're part of the experience. People, if you weren't there, there would probably be people who would not sign up. And I haven't heard that before where somebody decides to do a race because of who the announcer is. But so you've made that impact on people. So how do you think, how is it that you connect to the runners that maybe, other races don't allow, the announcers to, or other announcers just can't?
Well, first, thank you. That's a very nice compliment. I'd like to believe that I've made some impact in that regard. The task is really a multi-platformed piece of work where essentially what we try to do is inform and entertain a little bit and perhaps inspire people. And I think when any race announcer, and as far as Disney particularly, and I work with a lot of other people at Disney, I'm part of a sports host team of some other very, very capable announcers. So it's nice to be working with very, very qualified people. And I've been privileged to work with some of the best announcers in the business, and it's definitely impacted me. As far as it's just connecting with people. It's connecting. It's really caring about their experience, and actually becoming part of that experience in a very, very minimal way. It's really a privilege to be a race announcer, a sports host for an event where people are generally just so happy to be there. They're excited. Very often these are, it's part of a life-changing experience for a lot of these people. In many different ways, people are recovering from all kinds of horrific diseases or personal challenges. Everybody's got a story. And if you can somehow be part of that, even in the smallest way, people really enjoy being connected to the running community. And so being a runner and racer for as many years as I have, I get where they're coming from. And I try to emote that. And I believe that for the most part, people really understand that I understand their experience. I understand their struggle. And I understand their victories and their celebrations. And I think if you share that with people in a very sincere and genuine way, they really appreciate it, and they look forward to seeing you at various events.
I have a question. Obviously you've announced a lot of different races, and you've probably seen so much inspiration and so many great finishes and so many things that maybe made you get a tissue. But like when you think back on your career, is there like one moment that you think about as that was the moment of all moments of being an announcer?
Picking a moment.
What's the first thing that comes in your head when you think about it?
It's a great question. It's so hard to answer. I guess the first thing that would come up is I've been involved with the Komen for the Cure series for many, many years. And to see the women and men for that matter, because of course breast cancer is not gender specific, albeit affecting women much more than men, 1 in 8. To see the women, coming through, they've got, in many cases they're still in chemo, and they're given everything they can to finish a 5K. It's not a marathon, it's not a half marathon, it's not an ultra, but for them it is, and it's just showing that. It's just showing themselves that they can do something like that. And I've seen some finishes at some of the Komen events that, for all intents and purposes, have the same dramatic effect on me as when I see a finish at Kona with somebody on their hands and knees crossing the finish line after 17 hours. So again, it's tough to bring up one in particular, but something like that is just pretty special, and it sticks with you.
Walk me through, and that's fantastic. The job of a race announcer, it's the runners see it, hear you, until they get across the finish line, and they hear you at the finish. But I mean, you're there every step of the way in between. I mean, for Disney weekend, for example, how how long are your days, and how long do you get any sleep? It's got to be long days. And it's how many races was it? 4 races?
Yeah. Well. So Disney Marathon weekend coming up in January. We've got the 5K, 10K, half marathon, and kids events. So Disney, in effect, is it's an exercise in sleep deprivation, and Disney. Most of the Disney events start at oh boy, somebody's going to correct me on this. It's either 5 a.m. or 5:30. So they're very early starts, and there are traffic considerations. There is some rehearsal, sound checks, etc. So generally, my co-announcers and I are picked up from our Disney hotel at generally 1:30 in the morning. Oh,
and then you do it over, and then you do it over again the next day until you're done.
And then we do it over the next day, and then we do it over the next day, and then we do it over the next day. So now, yeah, I mean, and some of these people are doing dopey.
Yep.
So dopey being 5K, 10K, half marathon, or I can't even remember if it's 5K, 10K, half marathon, and marathon.
Yes,
or
it is.
Yes, the whole 9 yards. So far be it for me to complain about early wake ups because I'm not running a step, at least competitively on those weekends. But yeah, it kind of gets you, Pretty much when I'm not announcing, I am sleeping or trying to sleep or spending time with some friends that are there. But the Disney events are generally pretty exhausting. Essentially, what we used to do previously was we also had expo duty, where my co-announcers and I would entertain the people coming through the expos and official merchandise and bid pickup and doing all that. So you'd have roughly a 4-hour shift, 3-4 hour shift at the expo, and then and that would be after you had your race event, and it makes for a long day. But it's fun. Disney is a blast. I've been working with them for about 10 years at Disney World, and I did about 10 years at Disneyland before those events went on, I guess, what they're calling hiatus.
Yeah, I hope they come back, and a lot of people will miss those. And some of my best stories were from Disneyland, so I hope that continues. The famous story of Patty Pan.
That is truly one of the best stories, no doubt.
You weren't there for that one, I don't think.
I was not there, but I want to tell you, I was totally tuned in. Let me put it this way: I was particularly interested because I know the person that was victimized very well personally. And so the perp picked the worst possible person they could have picked outside of the race director himself to steal a bib from.
Yeah, and real quick, what happened is this runner, and actually it happened at a race prior to that, even before that weekend, somebody posted on one of the Disney running groups, hey, someone stole my bib, and then it was identified as being this Patty. And then fast forward to the next race series, someone posted the same kind of thing, hey, somebody picked up my actual physical bib at the expo. And so, so after the race was going on, we're looking for photos. I see the photo, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's Patty again. It's the same woman. I couldn't believe it. So we were trying to keep this out of the message boards because she was registered herself to run the very next day. So it's like, hey, we know who took it. It's this, it's this woman. And then they actually apprehended her going up to the finish line of the race she was actually registered for and took her medal from her. And she was cuffed and taken to her car where she was ticketed for parking in a handicap spot. So it was just absolutely nuts that she would.
But again, my point being that the person she stole it from was one of the most well-known people at the event, and the head of an incredible and creator and backer of a fabulous charity called Team Muscle Makers. And I mean, it was just It was just the worst person you could have stolen a bib from.
Yeah, and my theory is she was going off of she was finding out who was running these, either off the Disney message boards or whatever, because each time it was people who were members of, one of the Run Disney, Facebook groups or whatever. Yeah, and she absolutely picked the wrong person. I was in contact with, her as well, and, communicating to her, who this person was and all that. And, so I was kind of the conduit between, her and the race director. And, I was getting the play-by-play from their runners following her on the course. And, that was the nuttiest thing ever. I think we'll probably do kind of a recap and talk to all the people involved in doing that. And I was like debating, okay, I don't want to post. I wanted to keep it quiet that it was Patty before the next race because I didn't want half the marathoners hunting her down, but I wanted some people to know. So we were keeping it off the message boards until until the race had started at least, because it was so we keep a controlled environment and we didn't have pitchforks and everything going, after her. And there were people that actually dressed up as her, in following races, who dressed up as Patty and as police, and so there was she's now a costume. So
everybody, so many people costume for all the Disney events. That's a classic, and you did very well, because I think that was in the that was a pretty dramatic item in the early part of your marathon investigation. On Facebook and people, you got a lot of traction on that one.
Yeah, I sure did. I absolutely did. So now that's a kind of great segue into the, kind of the cheating and and whatnot. And you're at the finish line. You've probably seen as many people finish races as anybody on the planet. You and Bart, we had talked about that and brought your name up. So seeing all that, I'm sure. You're announcing, and have you ever seen about doing a marathon, about the 3-hour point, you see somebody coming across the finish line and you just think that there's no way in hell this person did the whole race, this person shouldn't be crossing?
Only every single race.
and
every single race?
Pretty much.
Wow.
Pretty much. Pretty much. You just
know.
You just know. Yeah, it's just, and I know I'll get some feedback on this, and I'm okay with that. Hey, I've been racing for nearly 40 years, okay? And I've been announcing for 25. I know what it looks like. I know what it should look like, okay? Am I generalizing? Sure. Am I profiling? Sure. I think I'm qualified to do so. And it happens. It happens a lot. I say pretty much every race. That might be a little over dramatic, but I'd say it'd be really fair to say 90% of the events I'm seeing stuff that it just no.
And I just want to be clear. My shock wasn't that I don't think that you're being honest. My shock was just I would have thought it would have been maybe one person every few races, not almost all of the races. The frequency is very alarming to me.
Oh no, it gets higher. The frequency gets higher and higher and higher. It's generally more pronounced in the longer distances, half marathon and particularly marathon. And I know that's no surprise to either of you gentlemen.
Not to me anyhow, Scott. I'm trying to bring on to my side of things, but yeah, I find most major marathons. I just Honolulu. I found probably about 300 people cut the course. Disney races, and again, it's not a reflection on Disney race in itself. It's just the nature of the beast. There's probably there's that spot, Wide World of Sports, and out and back. You can find 150 to 200 people every race that just cut that short. And it's not typically with a Disney runner to qualify for Boston. It's usually, hey, Disney people want to stop, take character photos. They just want to beat the balloon ladies who are tail in the back. They just want to finish. And you have a whole new kind of cheating that I never knew existed. You have people who cheat in races in order to up their corral placement. It's so that was so foreign to me when I first stumbled across it, and I wrote a couple times about it.
Right. Well, we've got, because at Disney, at so many events, of course, Disney is one I'm particularly experienced with. We've got so many corrals that For marathon weekend, if for the half marathon or the marathon, if you're toward the middle to back of the pack, you could easily have 35, 40 minutes, 50 minutes before you start, after the first start. So people really, they really want to provide those proof of times to move their corrals up.
Yeah, so I've written whole articles about that. I've seen people post on Craigslist, "Hey, run me a fast time so I can get in the first corral at Disney." So A, just so they can just finish, or B, so they can take their stop for all their character stops and get the photos and whatnot. Which kind of I jump a little back and forth here, but that's a good point. You see the stuff like at the finish line, Disney. There's hundreds of photos that kind of illustrate this, people posing for the photos, jumping in front of other runners and that kind of thing.
Sure.
What kind of stuff do you see that just makes you cringe, like at the finish line, as far as that kind of stuff goes?
Well, the finish lines get so busy that, and again, I'm working with a team at Disney, and I'm working, and very often with, Los Angeles Marathon or Big Sur, I'm working with Fitz Kohler or any number of other excellent announcers. So, we're sharing that time. One of the things that I have the most trouble with is the bib swapping. Because we've got the announcer mat.
Yes.
I'm continually getting names on the announcer mat, and people love hearing their name at the finish line. They might not say that, but they do. They love hearing themselves brought in by their name. And when this 6'3", 250-pound big full bearded guy comes in, and his name is Alice, I've got an issue with that. And it's, later in the later part of the race, it's not a big deal. But when it's happening in an area in the early part of the race, when I either know or believe that type of activity is affecting the race finish results, for top three in an age group, that's a real problem. And we try to work with the finish line, with the timers and the finish line managers to let them know, when we see something like that, and make sure someone is DQ'd, or there's a note placed on that finish so somebody can look at it. And, clearly it's not my job. It's not our job as sports hosts and announcers to be doing that, but you can't look the other way. I mean, it's just, I personally have a really difficult time with that, because I don't like cheating, and I don't like when people are robbed of their opportunity to get on the podium.
Yeah, and we've talked about, most podcasts I've talked about that, because we talked to Mark Roy with Sports Stats, and he says, and what I see too is almost every single race you see age group results affected by bib swapping. And I think it's just more of an education, people, about it. Hey, don't do it. Here's one of the reasons why you don't do it. But it happens, we talked about with Bart about Catherine Switzer got bumped out of an age group award in New York City Marathon by somebody who, by a woman who gave it to her son or something to that effect. And it was, so almost every race you have the initial age group results affected by a bib swapping. It's just, it definitely cringes. Do you ever call anybody out, without a bib, or you get a little bit, 6 hours into an event, and do you ever call somebody out?
I call people out routinely. Yes, I do. Yes, I have a real issue with banditing. It's not okay, and I feel very strongly about it. Going back many, many years, I guess initially at the request of race directors themselves to make a specific announcement that their race is a no bandit event, and to try to educate people on, a lot of people might not understand what a bandit is. and that, of course, it's an unregistered event that is essentially stealing resources that are provided to people who have paid. And of course, not to be lost on the fact that just about every race out there is for the benefit of some charitable organization or organization. So banditing is really problematic for a number of reasons. And yeah, I love calling people out. I had one race director who the routine that she asked us to do was to advise all the bandits and anybody who was unregistered, of course, to take this opportunity, 5-10 minutes out from the start, to leave the corral and go have a nice run somewhere else. And then following that statement was, all right, ladies and gentlemen, please look to your right, look to your left, look in front of you, look behind you. If you have an individual that does not have a bib on, please raise your hand so we can identify those individuals. So she took it to another level. And there's a number of races that I work that have significant security set up at the finish line or at several points on the race course to try to move those people off the course. I believe you've spoken with the race director from Miami. He does a real good job at the finish line.
Yeah, we talked about that in detail, and he videos it and puts it up there, kind of as a deterrent. And other people have taken to videotaping him as well. He does it himself because he wants to, to be there. And yeah, they'll catch a couple hundred a year, and that's just the ones that they, catch, before the finish line. Now people are kind of know that he does that, so maybe they'll bail on their own earlier, or hopefully just not even do it. And so, he's very much on the on the front end against that. And we did talk to Frankie a couple weeks ago and put that episode out and talked in detail about that as well. So I'm glad to hear you're calling people out, and so you're calling them out at the finish line. And do you do you refrain from, okay, I mean, bandits are pretty obvious, hey, they don't have a bib on, they're not registering, or or people with the bib swapping. The runner, if you saw me coming through at 2 hours and 50 minutes in a marathon, you would know I didn't do it. Would you call me out?
Well, you got to be careful. You
don't want to get it wrong.
Derek, you might have just had a really good day. I mean, it's a call. It's a call, and I don't want to be. I want to be proactive, but I also want to be professional and polite, and not everybody is built like a gazelle, and it's just the way it is. And look, the timers are getting more sophisticated all the time. Mark is Mark's a great example. He's I believe he's got the largest timing organization in the country, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
And some of the others, and they're really up in their game, and they can catch a lot of this stuff. And some of the stuff they miss, you do a real fine job of finding some of this stuff. We had a 10K a couple years ago here in California where there was fairly minimal money for the top three male and female athletes, and fairly minimal. I think it was 1,500 to 1,500, or 1,750, 500, something like that. First female athlete in was about 33 minutes and change. Real good effort, really fine effort. And she was absolutely, she was exhausted. She just dropped at the finish line. Girl behind her about 10, 15 seconds, same thing, just dropped right behind her. They were absolutely played out. Third female, about 5'3", and somewhere about 150 pounds, 160 pounds, stocky body type, comes through about 30 seconds behind the second female, and was not sweating, was not winded, was in about she was probably about 12th overall. Immediately, the timers looked at me, I looked at them immediately, and we knew this was not right. And the timers about 10 minutes later had a discussion with her, and she just insisted that she'd done the entire course. We went on, oh boy, it's escaping me. We went on the archives and found her previous two best times, a 10K where she ran, 53 minutes, and a 5K where she ran about 30 minutes. And she continued to argue her point. Her mother came over and was just screaming at us. It's just really interesting, which is why I'm really intrigued to see how your podcast continues, and with the hope that we get some of these people, because I'd really like to hear from them.
Yeah, there's some that I really want. I want the JD Greening. He was the one who did. It was basically 2 laps around a lake. There's a little bit more going there, and he only did 1 lap, so he did 13 plus miles and swore he did the full marathon. And he would have actually won the marathon, and he tried to use that time for Boston. The race immediately put him in the half marathon results, so he wasn't getting in. But he swore, even with my first article, he swore he did the whole marathon. Then finally, he said, "Oh, I must have just missed the second loop." Well, it's 13 miles, and so that was one where he was just, in spite of all the evidence in the world, and and then hearing from the course marshal where they claimed on the course, he said he blew past the bicyclist and the leader in order to win, and he was probably a 4.5 hour marathon guy. So it was just, I would like to talk to people like him.
Right.
Just completely, deny in the face.
I want to talk to Kelly Agnew. That's the one I want to hear.
Well, I'm sorry, Scott, which one?
Kelly Agnew, the ultra runner. Yes.
But
for me, it's more. It's not as much. I want to have these people on so that we can shame them and make them look bad. It's that I want. It's a chance for redemption. I want to hear the story of, what happened in their brain that stopped wired. It wasn't wired the way it should have been, and it convinced them that they should continue to do what they're doing. I don't think people are bad. I think that people just get in bad situations and they make bad decisions, and then they panic, and then they double down, and then they become just a victim of their own, sickness.
Yeah. There's just, I guess for them, there becomes no other way other than just, like, as you said, just doubling down and being insistent and hoping for the best. I mean, I hate to be redundant, but going back to the call with Bill in regard to Anita, once you got to the point where there was an agreement that the loop was missed, then and I believe you guys were really kind in not keep going back to the falsified, or what appeared to be a falsified Strava.
Oh, it was falsified. There's no question.
Well, yeah. So it's like, okay, so which one is which? But we don't need to go back over that. But it's just, again, it's the same thing. It's like, okay, if you've made an error, that's one thing. But there's cheating, and there's making an honest mistake, and they're clearly two very different things. It's
one question that I have, and I don't know if we've caused this through our social media activity and things like that, is that there may be a lost art of just saying, you know what, you're right, I screwed up. And then everybody says, I forgive you. Thanks for coming clean. And then you go on with your life. And maybe, when we look at what happens to these people that are accused over time, maybe one of the things that we need to look at is the way that we treat them might create an environment where what's their incentive? Like if the person comes clean and says, you know what, you got me, I cheated. Does that mean that the whole social media world isn't going to cave in on them? They're not going to be banned from the sport. They're not going to be mocked. Or, is that going to happen no matter what? And if so, it's kind of logical to try to cover it up when you think about it.
Yeah. I would, that's a really fine question. I would hope that there's some level of acceptance. I screwed up. I made a mistake, and it's something I never should have done. I did it, and I'll live and learn from that. So I'm thinking, hopefully at least 50% of social media is like, wow, that's really refreshing. and the other 50% is, like you said, probably going to get the pitchforks and the flamethrowers out, and who knows what happens from there. But, again, that's a good point. If there's no incentive to be honest or to accept your mistakes, there might be less of an inclination to do so. I don't know.
Yeah, as a whole in society, I definitely see where Scott's coming from as far as in my little world. It's, what I see, and I can't think of very many people who've fully admitted. Sometimes you get the half admission, okay, hey, it was an accident, or, okay, yeah, but why'd you fake the data? Or, there was the one case where it was the case that was featured on the Today Show where, I got the full admission before I ever wrote the article, and I think, most people, again, I never named her because of that. I mean, I could tell she was legitimately, remorseful. It wasn't just okay, shoot, I'm busted now. I better, what's the best way to get out of this? She was genuinely remorseful, and she's never cheated again, and everything's good. So, yeah, I think, especially when the cover-ups get worse and worse, the faking. I mean, people, the photoshopping Garmin data, just going back, the absurd levels that people go to, that inevitably makes it worse. I mean, you can just either deny it or just be quiet. Even just being quiet is better than, the denials. The denials are, heck, that's what gets people to my website, is the crazy denials. I mean, there's, people cut a course. Okay, I could, write about that all day, but it's people who cut the course and then, post about it on social media and fake the data and Photoshop finished photos. I've seen some of that where they've posted a finished photo and Photoshopped the time on the top, and they may not have cheated, but they were lying on social media. So it's so they didn't actually cut the course, but if you look at the result, it's not what shows, and the photo is different than what what it actually is. So all kinds of that. So yeah, it's definitely we're hoping to get a sports psychologist on in the coming weeks to kind of talk about that. We'll probably have him listen to the Bill interview and see if he can dissect that a little bit, and and others. So I think that's it, because social media, I think everyone agrees it plays into this. Whether it's happening more because of social media or people are getting caught more because of social media, or a combination of the two, but. Yeah, so it's crazy.
Yeah, I like the idea of the sports psychologist. I think we could get some real good input there, and maybe just kind of a basic understanding of why some of this might be happening, and more regularly. What would appear? I don't know if it's all of a sudden we're actually seeing it because we're looking for it and we're finding it. Or is it actually happening more and more? Are there, is there more cheating? Is there more course cutting? Counterfeiting, the counterfeiting, that drives me. That's insane. That's
what's that?
People counterfeiting bibs, actually making bibs.
Yeah, you get a lot of that with, especially like Boston, anything that's sold out or has a qualifying. So yeah, Boston, you get a lot of that where people, someone will post their bib. It's not even necessary. I mean, Boston says don't post your bib. Well, they haven't changed their bib design in 10 years. So you don't have to post your bib but regardless, people will either counterfeit or use an old bib. Hell, I posted a guy, I think it was a 1989 bib. That was different, but he still managed to get on the course for multiple years.
I saw that. That was kind of a classic Not that that's any better, but I mean, counterfeiting, that's a pure form of theft if I've ever seen one.
Yeah, I saw somebody had posted, there was a study, and I don't remember the college, someone had posted it long. I mean, it's probably a 60, 70-page study as far as the legality and, what stands, what grounds race directors have for as far as suing for people who bandit and, counterfeit whatnot. I need to get through that paper, and I need to get that, he's a sports lawyer, I need to get him on as well. I haven't gone through the whole paper, but yeah, to see until races, step up and actually, press charges in those cases. Even in that Patty case in Disney, charges were never placed. And I know, the owner of the bib, she was all for pressing charges, but charges never were placed against her. And she flat out, I don't know, I'm not sure exactly. We don't know how she did it. Did she have a fake ID? Did she just know somebody on the who was volunteering who got her the bib or what? But the same, she got a hold of, and it's not easy. Everyone says they do ask for ID at Disney races, so somehow she got through the system, and that's definite theft.
I think that would be a really good conversation because what do you do, and what is the extent of the responsibility, if any, of the race organization, and I think that's something that's coming more and more into conversation and into light as far as what is the responsibility of the race organization and the race director. Someone like yourself, shows the folks at Honolulu that 300 plus people clearly cut the course, and the response appears to be to bury the results instead of do something corrective or proactive. To me, that's a serious problem.
Yeah, Honolulu, and that went back a couple years ago when I first wrote about them, and I even said, I've written about other races, but yeah, they took it personal and said, hey, this guy has no standing and whatnot. We would have found him on our own. So then I pointed out the only people they disqualified was the ones that I pointed out. Here's some more. And then they did. So then it got a little bit more personal, I think, at that point. But then the next year I have the results, and I'm probably going to publish them in full once they're in the next few days or so, because I was able to get them anyhow. So, maybe then they'll just decide to do it on their own. Because it's public information. I can do that. I'm not going to charge for it or anything. But I think it's right to be able to have the 8 people who are top 10 in their age group. They should be able to look at the results of those above them and check their photos and do all that kind of stuff. Because inevitably, like I said, every race has that. But Honolulu, right, those runners have no way of knowing. Hey, was I really the 4th place runner? Or who's this person? And they just have no way of knowing or no way of checking as it stands right now.
Right. And I just I don't know, personally, I believe that the race organization has an obligation to make at least what I'd call a reasonable effort to ensure the integrity of the results. And, of course, Honolulu is not alone. There are other events that know that they've got, course issues and problematic situation where courses can be cut or people can cheat. And, I just think it's an obligation of the event, again, to ensure the integrity of the information that they're providing and that they're making available to those individuals for placement in events such as Boston and other events that require a qualifying time.
Isn't the market going to take care of that to some extent? Because would you think that Boston would say, hey, wait a second, this Honolulu Marathon, everybody's cheating, nobody cares, we're just not going to use that as a qualifier anymore, we're going to just remove it? Has anything like that ever happened before?
Exactly. Okay, so that's all right. So that's where I stand on it. Is I believe it's and not that BAA and Boston Marathon needs to be the judge and jury of all this stuff, but if you've got a situation that's clearly problematic, and runners are clearly using an event or events to cheat to qualify for Boston, yeah. They are no longer become Boston qualifiers, period. And I don't know that the numbers would, the effect of the numbers for that event would be significant, but they might be. Eric would know better than anybody else, and that's a lot of work to look down the way to see if those cheaters, those questionable times, ended up to be used to qualify for Boston.
Yeah, I had done that a couple years ago, and there were a handful of ones that remained. Again, they had removed some of them eventually. Yeah. So a lot of that, we have the mass cheating. Again, usually it's back of the pack. Mexico City, for example, we got 5,000 people wanting the medal.
Right. Where don't I remember that there were people with bibs on at along the finish line route at mile 20 or something like that, cheering on.
Yep. Yeah, just absurdity. You see the woman running right by the elites because she hopped on a little bit earlier than she probably should have to not get caught. So yeah, there was it's rather comical. I mean, it was so bad. And again, it didn't get any better this year. Hopefully, after they're done with the O medal, then it'll subside. So. But yeah, they didn't do really much to stop it, and I'm sure it was just as bad 3-4 years ago when nobody, when we weren't looking that hard. So, and we're kind of touching on the point where, again, you get a lot of people in a lot of races, and I'm not picking on Disney. I have been accused of picking on Disney in the past, but as far as that everybody gets a medal, and I wrote the article. Somebody dropped out. I can't remember. It was like 18.9 miles, and said, "Well, I trained real hard. I didn't finish, but I'm a damn marathoner." I'm like, "Well, no, you're not." It's up to if Disney has enough medals and they want to give you a medal. I've kind of backed off that. It's up to the race. If it's a participant medal or a finisher medal. If it's a finisher medal, I really wouldn't want to take one. If you didn't finish it, it's just kind of a slap in the face to those that really did finish it. But if the race offers it to you, it's like, all right, who am I gonna,
Yeah, that's a tough one. Certainly I could see any argument where it potentially devalues the finisher's medal for those who struggled through and or trained like mad to get to the finish line. I don't support that. They're going to do what they're going to do, and we've had the events, and not to pull this away from Disney specifically, but we've had the events where the SAG wagon, and this is non-Disney to be specific now, I won't name the event, but the SAG wagon dropped the runners off at mile 26 and let them finish.
Well, I know that used to happen. You may be talking about these, but I know at Rock and Roll that used to happen frequently, and they were going to be supposed to be like put in a deferred category and whatnot, right. And it just wasn't happening. But yeah, they were brought forward and told to finish. Okay, and I have had runners who were in that situation who would complain to me, "Hey, I have a finish time. I did not finish this marathon. I'm not claiming I did. I did what I was told."
Right. Scott Coomer is one of them.
Do you have a medal, Scott?
As you may recall from a prior discussion at the Las Vegas Marathon, one of us, not me, decided that they were going to drink too many clamatos, and we stopped at a taco stand, and we didn't realize they were actually going to make the tacos from scratch. So we stood there while everybody ran by, and we were just kind of being silly. We didn't think about the fact that there's a 5-hour cutoff, which doesn't sound extreme, but if you're going to screw around eating tacos and drinking beer, 5 hours is not a long cutoff. And so what happens at mile probably 17 or 18, they just asked us to turn around and cut off 4 miles of the course. And then they gave us medals at the end, and I have a finish time.
Right. But did you say clamatos? Oh,
yeah,
man.
That's the worst. I don't care about the cutting as much as the clamatos, Scott.
It's the clamatos.
No, you don't understand. It's beer with tomato juice, with clam juice all together. Oh. It's like a spiritual drink.
Well, Scott, I know somebody who's going to have a field day with this information. Jane Benfer is going to be all over you now that you've admitted to cutting the course in Las Vegas Rock and Roll.
Well, but again, I'm not admitting that I cut the course.
Well,
what I'm saying is I did this is what you just explained.
Yes.
The race director said do A, B, C, and D, gave me a medal and told me to shut up. And I will submit that I got my money back because I was ahead of their self-professed cutoff time. they screwed up.
Well, that's funny because I did the Air Force Marathon, and it was the week before North Coast 24, so I wasn't trying for speed. If I was, I probably would have been in the same situation, but I'm telling myself. So what happened, it was a black flag situation, and they pulled about mile 20. They did the same thing. They did the cutoff and said, okay, everybody, you're going to have to wait for that. And at that point, I think they pulled it too early because I was to the point where I could have walked and made the cutoff, and so was everybody else. And I felt bad for the first-time marathoners. I was just kind of doing a training for my 24-hour race the next week. I wanted to get in some kind of run, but they put us on the bus. They said, okay, we're going to bus you to the finish. You can go and get your medals and whatnot. And so I'm sitting there. I'm like, all right, do I stand up and get on my high horse and tell everyone, don't you dare get your medal? Or do I just, but you see these people like, hey, if they want to get their, they didn't have finish times, but they got their medal, and I, instead of going to the finish line, I went to the car. A, because the car was closer than the finish line, and B, there's no way I was going to get my medal. I was going to kind of go and see what would happen if I would have gotten a finish time, or, just see what they were doing. But, same thing. And then, I got but because they did that, they gave everybody who got black flagged, I think it was everybody who got black flagged, they gave a free entry into next year's race or the following year. So I guess I'll be doing it again.
Yeah, you have situations like that, black flags and others. I was just at the Monterey Bay Half Marathon this past November, and we had, as many other events, we had a cancellation due to poor air quality. And so we just flat out canceled the event. We had the 5K on Saturday and the kids run on Saturday, but the half marathon was canceled at about 5 p.m. on Saturday. Yet a lot of people went out and they ran, and we did have, in essence, we had a nice party at the finish line area, and we had shirts for everybody. Medals were out there for anybody that showed up and wanted to take one. A lot of people went and they ran a half marathon or just went out and had a run. And there are just extraneous situations at Disney. We had. For Wine and Dine one year, we had lightning. We had lightning in Orlando, and we ended up shortening the event, and it was 6.5 miles, 6.6 miles. So it was a half of a half. But everybody who finished got the half marathon medal, and you make accommodations and reasonable modifications as is necessary. It just happens.
Yeah, well, you had 2017. The half marathon was canceled, I believe, for Walt Disney Weekend, because of lightning. But then you had people running on the interstates and trying to get their miles in themselves who were doing dopey and wanted to legitimately do it. Well, I can appreciate wanting to do the mileage. You've got to at some point be smart, and there's somewhere in between, there where, I understand. Hey, they wanted to actually do the mileage to feel like they earned their dopey medal or earned their half marathon medal, but
right. I'll tell you what. That of course, I have no way to confirm how many people actually ran on that Saturday morning, but it wouldn't surprise me if there were 5,000-6,000 people plus who went out and ran a half marathon anyway. Because the lightning storm that was expected to come in and the big rainstorm that was expected to come in did not hit. But of course, you've got to cancel something like that well in advance. So it didn't happen, unfortunately. Disney was extremely generous in the accommodations they made for everyone that had to have it canceled. But man, anywhere you look that morning, any resort, anywhere, not just on the course, but anywhere around Orlando, there were thousands of people running. It was incredible.
Yeah, I can imagine. But then I see, don't do it on the highway. Don't do the exact course. It's not closed now. So that's kind of you got to be safe when you're doing that as well. And that's kind of the other thing with the, it's not, again, any running group, you see the post, somebody saying, hey, I decided, hey, I want to do dopey. I've never run 10K before. Is that a good idea? And then, you have people saying, sure, you can do it. It's Disney. It's magical. And that drives me nuts, and drives a lot of people nuts because that's not good advice. And that's the kind of thing that leads to, the people at the back of the pack, cutting across so they can finish, to beat the balloon ladies.
Sure. I mean, 10K, then a half marathon, then a marathon the next day. Tell you what, I've run, 400, 500 races, never done anything like that before, never will.
Yeah, it's yeah. I would like to enjoy that atmosphere, and yeah, that sounds cool. But yeah, I realized just getting back into running this year, I'm nowhere, I'm nowhere near where I, 10 years ago I could just kind of picked it up and kind of struggle through that kind of stuff. Now it's definitely a struggle. Somehow I do better in 24-hour races than I do in marathons, and I don't know. Just I guess I can walk forever, but I just can't. I mean, at the same exact time I did the Flying Pig and I did New York. New York I should have done much faster because it was cool. Flying Pig was an extremely hot day. I did it had like the same time within minutes, and I'm like, well, I was running all year. I should have done better, but I just whatever. It's different. But so you just got to know what you can do and and be smart. And I was again right now doing a marathon under the time limits, kind of right at the extent of my of my limit. So I'm not going to go ahead and sign up for Dopey.
Well, I'll tell you what, Derek. If and when you change your mind, we're going to find a bib for you, one that'll have your name on it.
Oh, nice. Just give me any bib.
Let me make a special request. If anybody's ever in charge of getting a bib for Derek, let's make sure it says cheater across it. Instead of his name, it should just say cheater.
Well, funny thing, when I started the site and like initially I was kind of anonymous. I was just a blogger, wasn't a big deal. Then when it started getting attention, it's like, I had to think back to, I did the Columbus Marathon, and I think that was my last attempt at a marathon before I really stopped, where I had done a 24-hour race. I'm like, I can finish a marathon. I got, the Columbus Marathon at the time is the same exact course as a half marathon until the point where you turn off to finish the half, and then the full goes back on its own course. So I was slowing down at the half, and I decided, I'm not going to be able to finish the full, or I would be a struggle. I'm just going to finish the half. So I, cut down, and so I downgraded from the full to the half. It's like, in my head,
gotcha.
And in my head, I didn't, I told them, I said, hey, I signed up for the full. I finished the half. I don't care about the medal and whatnot. Definitely don't give me the full medal. But I was sure I was in the half results. But I had to make sure I double check that. I'm like, I just better double check to make sure I don't have a 2-hour 20-minute full marathon on my on my Athlinks.
Scott, there's already a phenomenon when Derek runs any of these races, because the people watch this guy when he crosses this timing mat, he crosses it, and then he comes back and he crosses it again, and he comes back and he crosses it again to make sure that everybody knows that, that he did it. He crossed. There's no missed mats, because, man, I can just see social media picking up if Derek misses a mat.
Well, I have no real evidence I did the Flying Pig, if anyone wants to question my 6.5-hour time, because whatever my Garmin I had, it didn't, it conked out on me. So I have the same excuse I rip on everybody else for, hey, I lost my data. Yeah, I lost my data. I'm somehow, I didn't make the effort. I'm in I think I'm only in finish line photos. So if I had a fast time, I would have called myself out as a cheater. So I have no GPS data to back it up. I didn't miss any mats, but no GPS data, and I'm in one photo on the course. So it's I can see that. But I made sure I missed no mats.
I think the one thing that we learned from this is that the answer is probably to have some sort of a certification process for marathons, which Derek oversees, to make sure that they're finding cheaters and that there's integrity to the process before Boston will give it the seal of approval to be a qualifier.
There you go. That's a great idea.
I like that. I give that a big thumbs up.
And I do work with some races. I work with Eli at the California International Marathon, and I'm help verify the results. We're in process of doing that now, and every single age group award, I look at photos of every single person who won an age group award to make sure there's no bib swapping, and I validate all those individually. Boston qualifiers get a little closer scrutiny. So we go through that detail. So that's something that I do offer that's available. So,
well, you know what? We're just in an era of changing times. I mean, and the timers are doing different things. Their game is moving up. They're stepping up and doing new things. So I think that this is a great opportunity for the race organizations, the directors, and the management companies to do likewise and take a look at some of the services that are available, yours and any others that might be available in the same light, to ensure a reasonable opportunity to certify and know that the finish information's has been scrubbed, at least in some minimal way.
or at least available for scrutiny. So at the bare minimum, unlike Honolulu. So, no, this has been fantastic, Rudy. I appreciate your time and your support, and you've hopped on. I remember again initially I didn't know much about really who you were, and someone's like, "Hey, Rudy commented on your post." It was probably one of the first Disney ones I did, and everyone was like, "Okay, hey, who's this Rudy guy?" I'm like, "Oh, hey, yeah, cool." And so so you definitely have you have the following, and again, like I said, for a race director to have that kind of a race director for a race announcer, to have that kind of following with you and Fitz and and everybody else. I need to get Fitz on too. Fitz has followed for a long time and commented, and she'd be fun to talk to, I'm sure, and have some of the similar.
One last question before we go, though.
Yes.
Sure.
So, setting aside all of the great races that you already are the announcer for, which obviously you would answer all of them as the answer to this, what would be the dream race for you to be the announcer for? Like the one that you don't do. Like if I said you could do any race you want, you don't already do. Which one would you pick?
I would. Oh boy, I'd love to do Marine Corps. I think Marine Corps is something very special. Rick Nellis does a great job there, and my buddy Kenny, the lead announcer there, is fantastic. But man, I'd love to be in that crew. I think Marine Corps is one of the. It's just a dream event. So much like Boston or New York or Chicago, one of the majors. I mean, I do Los Angeles, and it's wonderful. It's a great event, but I'd love to step up to Marine Corps. Kenny Berger and that whole group does a fantastic job. I'd love to be part of that team, and that's a great question. Thank you for that.
Perfect.
All right. Well, that's what we got. So Rudy, we'll have this one up there probably the week before Disney, so everyone can enjoy listening to you as they kind of get psyched up for Disney weekend, and they'll definitely be hearing you at Disney, and I'm sure at many more races, coming up throughout the year. Is your 2019 all booked up already?
Pretty much, yeah. I've, I promised myself I'd cut back, and that hasn't worked out too well. So things are pretty booked up. A lot of Disney stuff and a lot of other events. And hey, just in closing, an opportunity to say, with all sincerity, thank you so much for all you do. It's good for the sport. People do care. I know you've got your detractors, but you also have a lot of fans, and we really and honestly appreciate it. I hope people will take the time out to throw a couple dollars toward Marathon Investigation. You guys put a lot of time in on that, and you deserve the support. And I hope that in closing that they'll get on and throw their credit card down for a few bucks.
And I appreciate that very much, Rudy. Thank you very much again for your time and your support. And we'll be seeing you at the finish line.
Have a great evening, guys.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Boy, that's a perfect segue to ways people can help out the show if they want. If you're listening to this and if you like what's going on, a few things that you can do to help out the show. One, go to iTunes and leave a review. It really, really helps us out. Subscribe to the show, rate the show, and leave a review on whichever platform you're listening to it on. The other thing you can do is you can contribute a couple bucks a month. If you're listening to all of these shows, you're getting about 2 to 5 hours a month worth of content. If you go to patreon.com and you go to the Marathon Investigator, there's a way you can give like $1 a month, $2 a month, up to as many dollars a month as you want. And it really helps pay for the costs and expenses of the show and keeps the show going. So if you like what you hear and you want to be a part of the continuation of this success, go to Patreon, drop a couple bucks down, and it really, really goes a long way and helps out the show. If you want to learn more about me, I have a funny, I'm dropping a podcast today that's just crazy. Meet the Listeners call-in show where we talk about a lot of questionable things. It's called 10 Junk Miles. It's a companion for your run. It's like taking some running friends, putting them in your ears and going on a run with them. And also, this is a big announcement, breaking news. We just got our permits for the Badger Trail races in Southwest Wisconsin. It's a 100-mile, 100K, 50-mile, 50K marathon and half marathon on a beautiful, flat, buffed-out trail covered with trees and leaves, and it goes through a really, really long tunnel. Great race. check it out. It's on Ultra Sign Up or at 10junkmiles.com.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott. And, of course, people know where to find me. They should. Marathoninvestigation.com. Go to Facebook, Marathon Investigation, to follow to make sure you get updated on all the articles. Twitter, just search my name, Derek Murphy, and you can follow me there. Instagram, Marathon Investigation. That hasn't been updated, but it will be very soon. And, yeah, definitely on the podcast, again, Patreon. Go on Patreon, Marathon Investigation, and also make sure you check out Scott's podcast at 10 Junk Miles. Subscribe and download all those. Those are great listens for your runs and for long drives across the state of Ohio. I know that for a fact.
And if you want to go back and figure out how me and Derek got to know each other, I think it's episode 2 of the show.
Yes, we talk about episode 1 and 2. We do a little introduction. Episode 2, we replay an episode of 10 Junk Miles where Scott interviewed me a little over a year ago, and you can kind of see where Scott stands on some things, and where we disagree, and where we some common ground. I don't know if we found any common ground on that episode or not. We may have. I think we have since.
Where we just said let's just agree to disagree on this, but we do agree on that.
Yeah, exactly. And I think we agree that I think Scott doesn't like cheating as much as anybody. It's kind of how do we go about it and how do we deal with it, and what's the appropriate response. So that's where the disagreement stems, and we'll see that kind of going forward as we try to get more people who were accused onto the show, and they're all welcome. So again, if anybody's been accused of cheating on my website, feel free to reach out and we'll have you on. And with that, I think that's a wrap. Thank you very much, Scott, and we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you for listening to the Marathon Investigation Podcast. Have a questionable result to report? Visit marathoninvestigation.com to contact us or email Derek at results@marathoninvestigation.com.
Another case closed for the Marathon's silent guardian.